let's slow this down and really talk about what just happened, because on the surface it looks like another messy UK media cycle, but underneath it there's a much bigger story being exposed. A story about relevance, about obsession, about power, and about how one woman who supposedly doesn't matter anymore continues to dominate the entire narrative without even trying. So imagine this. There's a full Christmas Carol service. Not just any service, but one that has been positioned as the event. Carefully curated, carefully staged, carefully framed by palace press and friendly outlets as warm, maternal, wholesome, emotional, and symbolic. This was meant to be a defining royal moment, a moment designed to remind the public who the future queen is supposed to be. And they didn't stop there. They brought out the children. Because when optics aren't working, children are always the fallback. A piano duet, a mother-daughter performance, a supposedly intimate, tender, emotionally resonant moment designed to melt hearts and dominate headlines. This was not accidental. This was not organic. This was strategic. This was supposed to be Kate's mega night. And yet, despite all of that effort, the staging, the symbolism, the family imagery, the UK media still found itself spiralling over Meghan Markle. Not because Meghan showed up, not because Meghan spoke, not because Meghan announced a project, not because Meghan released an interview, not because Meghan responded to anyone, but because a business account reposted product photos, jam, flowers, lifestyle images. That's it. And the UK media lost its mind. Now, let's pause right there, because that reaction alone tells you everything you need to know. If Kate truly commanded public interest on her own, if she truly sold, if she truly had organic appeal, there would be no reason none to mention Meghan at all. They could have stayed focused on the carol service. They could have flooded the headlines with praise. They could have celebrated tradition, continuity, family values, symbolism. But they didn't. Because they couldn't. Because Kate does not hold attention without comparison. And comparison always leads back to Meghan. This was supposed to be Kate's night, yet the media couldn't stop talking about Meghan. That's not coincidence. That's not sabotage. That's not unfairness. That's reality. And what makes this even more ridiculous is the expectation being placed on Meghan Markle, an expectation that is both absurd and deeply revealing. There is this unspoken demand, this bizarre entitlement, that Meghan should freeze her entire existence whenever a royal event happens, as if she's supposed to consult the palace calendar before living her life. As if she's supposed to say, "Oh, Kate is playing piano today. Guess I'll shut down my business, cancel my posts and stop existing." That is the level of delusion we're dealing with. And let's be crystal clear here, Meghan did not post anything herself. It wasn't her personal Instagram, it wasn't her voice, it wasn't her messaging, it was as ever reposting content. That's it. And yet that alone generated more traction, more engagement, more emotional response than a palace-produced Christmas event featuring the future Queen of England. That's not Meghan's fault. That's a branding failure. And instead of acknowledging that, the UK media reacted exactly the way insecure institutions always do, with outrage, projection and blame. They plastered glowing, radiant photos of Meghan next to stiff, gloomy images of the Wales family, and then tried to convince the public that Kate is the popular one. That Meghan is irrelevant. That Meghan is unpopular. That Meghan is finished. But here's the problem with that narrative. You don't obsess over people who don't matter. You don't monitor their business accounts. You don't track their reposts. You don't analyze their engagement. You don't frame them as a threat. Irrelevance doesn't trigger this level of fixation. And what makes this whole thing even more humiliating is that Harry and Meghan clearly are not paying attention to the UK media or the royal family at all. They are living their lives, running businesses, raising children, moving forward. And yet the UK media is watching Meghan like a hawk, reacting to every move as if it's a personal provocation. That imbalance is embarrassing. It exposes who is actually stuck. And then we get to the duet, and this is where the situation completely unravels. Because instead of universal praise, the performance became a lightning rod for mockery. And before anyone rushes to clutch pearls, let's be clear, no one is attacking a child. What people are responding to is the decision to stage the moment the way it was staged. Because when children are brought out for optics, criticism always lands on the adults who orchestrated it. And the criticism was brutal. People started joking about how long it must have taken to learn 3 notes. They connected it to Kate's limited engagement schedule. They mocked the simplicity of the piece. They questioned the authenticity of the moment. They laughed, they shrugged, they moved on. And that is the real issue. The event failed to inspire admiration. It failed to create momentum. It failed to shift the narrative. And instead of asking why, the UK media blamed Meghan. Again. Which brings us to the comments, and this is where the mask really slips. Comment after comment pointed out the absurdity of expecting Meghan to shut down her business whenever a royal does something ceremonial. People openly laughed at the idea that Instagram reposts from another continent could overshadow a future queen's biggest night. They asked the obvious question, if jam can steal the spotlight, what does that say about the monarchy? And it's a fair question. Because strong institutions don't feel threatened by lifestyle content. Strong figures don't panic over reposts. Strong leadership doesn't need comparison to survive. Others went even further, calling out the racial undertones baked into the outrage. The idea that Meghan is somehow not allowed to earn money, exist publicly or thrive without backlash is disturbing but not surprising. The reaction isn't rational, it's reflexive, it's emotional, it's rooted in resentment. 8 years later, 8 years after she left, 8 years without engagement. And yet they cannot let her go. That's not power, that's obsession. The so-called future of the monarchy appears relevant only when Meghan's name is dragged into the conversation. Without her, the coverage collapses. Without her, the interest fades. Without her, the events land with a thud. And that's the part they don't want to admit. Because it's easier to blame Meghan than to confront the reality that the institution itself is struggling to hold attention in a modern world. In the end, this entire episode says nothing about Meghan and everything about the UK media and the monarchy. A Christmas carol service, a piano duet, a carefully curated family moment. All of it designed to elevate Kate's profile, and none of it worked. And instead of reflecting, recalibrating or evolving, they chose the same tired tactic. Blamed the woman who wasn't even there. And that, right there, is the story. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think it's reasonable to expect Meghan to pause her life for royal optics? What does it say when silence and reposts generate more attention than palace-produced events? And why do you think the media still can't let her go? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, happy holidays, and I'll see you in the next one.